The sky above California sparkled with stars on a clear winter night. Dr. Olivia Carter stared at her computer screen in the Mount Wilson Observatory, rubbing her tired eyes. For 12 hours straight, she had analyzed strange data patterns coming from Neptune's moon Triton. The signals defied explanation. "This can't be right," she whispered, taking another sip of cold coffee. The energy readings fluctuated in impossible ways, breaking known laws of physics. They formed patterns too regular to be natural, yet too complex to be from any human source. Dr. Carter ran the analysis program for the 5th time, getting the same results. Her phone rang, breaking the silence. "Hello, Olivia, it's Dan from NASA JPL. Are you still seeing those anomalies?" "Yes. They're getting stronger." "Dan, this isn't background radiation or instrument error. Something is generating these signals." She sent him the latest readings. The line went quiet as Dan reviewed the data. "I'm calling Director Wilson right now. Stay where you are." Within hours, the observatory buzzed with government officials and scientists. By morning, the president received a briefing on what many were now calling the Triton signal. 3 days later, Captain Jack Norton walked through the halls of NASA headquarters. A decorated astronaut with 3 moon missions under his belt, Jack had been enjoying retirement until the urgent summons came yesterday. "Captain Norton, thank you for coming," said Director Wilson, gesturing to a seat at the conference table where Dr. Carter and several officials waited. "You said it was important," Jack replied, studying the faces around him. "Must be, to pull me off my fishing boat." Director Wilson nodded to Dr. Carter, who stood and activated a holographic display showing Neptune and its moons. "What I'm about to show you hasn't been released to the public," she began. 2 weeks ago, we detected unusual energy patterns coming from Triton. The signal contains mathematical sequences that couldn't occur naturally." Jack leaned forward. "You're saying it's artificial? From who?" "That's what we need to find out. The International Space Vessel Horizon is being prepared for an investigation mission. We want you to command it." Jack hadn't expected that. Horizon isn't even fully tested for deep space travel. "We've accelerated the final modifications," said a man in a military uniform. "The vessel will be ready in 3 weeks." As they discussed the mission, reports came in from around the world. People described strange dreams featuring identical geometric patterns. Communication systems experienced unexplained failures. Observatory teams reported brief sightings of impossible shapes in the sky that disappeared before they could be photographed. Jack met his crew the following day. Engineer Sam Rodriguez, a genius with machinery who could fix almost anything. Dr. Ellie Winters, the leading xenobiologist who specialized in theorizing about alien life. And Major Alan Blackwood, a stern military liaison with Special Forces training. "I need to know what we're really dealing with," Jack told them in their first private meeting. "Is this first contact or something else?" Sam checked that the room was secure before speaking. "The energy signature is unlike anything in our databases. It's affecting our technology in ways we don't understand. And potentially affecting us," added Dr. Winters. "The shared dream reports show identical patterns across different cultures and languages. Whatever this is, it might be trying to communicate through our subconscious." Major Blackwood remained skeptical, or preparing us for something worse. As launch preparations accelerated, Dr. Carter made another discovery. Looking at historical images of Triton, she found something researchers had missed: structures beneath the icy surface that appeared in certain lighting conditions. "They'd been there all along," she told Jack the night before launch. "We just weren't looking properly." Jack stared at the enhanced images. "Something's waiting for us out there." "Be careful," Olivia warned. "Whatever you find, it's already reaching toward Earth." The next morning, as Horizon prepared for launch, Jack watched Earth from the viewport, wondering if he would see it the same way when he returned. The Horizon left Earth's orbit with a burst of blue flame from its engines. Inside the ship, Captain Jack Norton watched his home planet grow smaller on the main screen. Course set for Neptune's moon Triton. Sam announced from the navigation station. Estimated travel time: 21 days with our enhanced engines. The ship hummed with energy as it accelerated. The crew settled into their routines, monitoring systems, and preparing equipment for their arrival. But by the third night in space, something strange began to happen. Jack woke up gasping, his sheets soaked with sweat. In his dream, he had seen a massive shape moving beneath the ice of Triton, something with countless limbs that reached toward him. He walked to the mess hall for water and found Dr. Winters already there, her face pale. "You had the dream too," she said. It wasn't a question. "How did you know?" "Because I had it. So did Sam and Alan. We all saw the same thing." The next morning, they compared notes. Each crew member described identical visions of a vast intelligence waiting beneath Triton's surface, something ancient that had been sleeping for eons. "This isn't normal," Major Blackwood insisted. "We're still 50 million miles from Triton. How could anything there affect our dreams?" Dr. Winters ran tests on their brain activity while they slept. The results shocked her. "Our brains are synchronizing during REM sleep," she explained. "It's like we're connecting to some kind of psychic network." As they traveled deeper into the outer solar system, the dreams became more vivid. They saw flashes of a civilization that had visited Triton billions of years ago. They glimpsed beings of light who had fought against something dark and powerful. "It's trying to show us something," Ellie told the others. "I think it's the history of whatever we're approaching." Sam spent his waking hours developing a technology that might help. He converted some of the ship's radiation shielding into what he called mind shields, devices that generated a specific frequency that seemed to reduce the dream intensity. "It's not perfect," he admitted as he handed out small devices to each crew member, "but it should give us some mental space." On the 10th day, communication with Earth became difficult. Messages arrived corrupted, with strange symbols embedded in the text. Video calls showed bizarre distortions, as if something was interfering with the signal. "Look at this," Jack said during their daily briefing. He showed them archived images of Triton that Dr. Carter had sent before communications degraded. The pictures revealed geometric patterns on the moon's surface that previous missions had somehow missed or ignored. When enhanced, they formed what looked like enormous symbols half buried under centuries of ice. "Those are artificial structures," Sam said, leaning closer to the screen. "Whoever built them had incredible technology." Ellie studied the symbols. "They look similar to the patterns in our dreams." As they passed Jupiter's orbit, Major Blackwood became increasingly agitated. The mind shield wasn't working as well for him. "Something's watching us," he told Jack privately. "I can feel it scanning my thoughts, looking for weaknesses." Jack noticed Alan checking weapons systems more frequently. The soldier's eyes had dark circles under them from lack of sleep. On day 17, the signal from Triton intensified. The ship's instruments detected massive energy spikes coming from beneath the moon's surface. "It knows we're coming," Ellie whispered. That night, Jack dreamed of a voice that spoke without sound. It called itself Sorthel, and it had waited longer than humans could comprehend for someone to arrive. "We need to be ready for anything," Jack told his crew the next morning. "Whatever's on Triton has been influencing us since before we left Earth. It wanted us to come." Sam checked his instruments. 3 more days until we reach orbit." Jack nodded, looking at the distant speck that was Neptune and its pale moon. "And then we find out what's been calling us." The Horizon entered orbit around Triton, engines flaring as it slowed. Through the viewports, the crew saw a frozen wasteland of nitrogen ice and methane snow. Triton's surface looked peaceful, but the instruments told a different story. Energy readings spiked from a region near the South Pole. "That's our landing zone," Jack said, pointing to a map display. The spot matched perfectly with the coordinates where Dr. Carter had identified the strange structures. The landing craft detached from the main ship with Jack, Sam, Ellie, and Alan aboard. As they descended, ice crystals swirled around the craft's windows. Temperature outside is negative 391 degrees Fahrenheit, Sam reported. Suits are rated for it, but don't take any chances. They touched down on the icy surface with a gentle bump. When the door opened, they stepped out into an alien landscape. Dark nitrogen geysers erupted in the distance against the backdrop of Neptune hanging huge in the sky. "The signal is coming from beneath us," Ellie said, checking her handheld scanner. "About 30 meters down." They deployed drilling equipment, cutting through the ice at the point where the signal was strongest. After 2 hours of work, the drill broke through into an empty space. "There's a cavity under here," Sam said in surprise. They widened the hole and lowered lights into the darkness. What they saw made them fall silent. Below them was not a natural cave, but a vast chamber with smooth walls covered in symbols similar to those in their dreams. "This is artificial," Jack whispered. "Someone built this." They descended on cables into the chamber. Their flashlights revealed a structure that should not have been possible, a complex of rooms and halls carved into Triton's ice, preserved perfectly in the freezing vacuum. "These markings," Ellie said, examining the walls. "I recognize some from our shared dreams. This symbol keeps repeating." She pointed to a spiral shape with 7 branches. Major Blackwood found a central room larger than the others. In its center stood a pillar of black material that wasn't ice or rock. "My translator is picking up patterns in these symbols," Ellie said, scanning the walls with her device. "They're talking about an entity called Sorthul. It says it was imprisoned here by beings called the Lightbringers over 2 billion years ago." "Imprisoned?" Jack asked. "Yes. According to this, Sorthul was a godlike being that consumed entire civilizations. It fed on consciousness itself." Sam examined the black pillar. "This doesn't match any material in our database. It's absorbing all light that hits it." As they explored, Alan became increasingly agitated. He kept looking over his shoulder, as if hearing noises. "We should leave," he said suddenly. "Something's wrong." "What is it?" Jack asked. "I can hear it. Whispering." Before they could react, Alan walked to the pillar and placed his hand on it. The material rippled like liquid at his touch. Suddenly, the chamber filled with an eerie blue light that seemed to pour from the walls and floor. The black pillar began to transform, stretching upward and outward like a living thing. Alan stepped back, his eyes wide with horror. "What did I do?" he whispered. The pillar collapsed into a pool of darkness that spread across the floor. From it rose a shape that kept changing, sometimes looking like a massive tentacled creature, other times like a swirl of stars and darkness. "Sorthul," Ellie gasped. The entity towered above them, its form stretching to the ceiling. When it spoke, they heard it not with their ears but in their minds. "Free. After eons, I am free." Alan suddenly drew his weapon and pointed it at Jack. His eyes had gone completely black. "He wants your ship," Alan said in a voice not entirely his own. "He's been waiting for someone to come, to take him home." Sam grabbed Jack's arm. "We need to get out of here. Now." The chamber shook as Sorthul continued to grow, darkness spreading through the ancient structure. "Run," Jack shouted, pulling Ellie toward the exit as Alan fired his weapon, missing them by inches. The entity's laughter filled their minds as they fled toward the surface, the ice trembling beneath their feet. Jack, Sam, and Ellie raced through the ancient complex as the walls shook around them. Behind them, Major Blackwood pursued with his weapon drawn, his movements jerky and unnatural. "He's being controlled," Ellie shouted as they climbed back toward the surface. "Sorthul is inside his mind." They reached the surface and sprinted toward their landing craft. Alan emerged from the hole moments later, firing his weapon. A shot grazed Sam's leg, making him stumble. "Get in," Jack yelled, helping Sam into the craft. Ellie jumped in after them and sealed the door just as Alan reached it. He pounded on the metal, his face pressed against the small window, eyes completely black. "Take off," Sam urged, clutching his injured leg. Jack started the engines, and the craft lifted away from Triton's surface. Through the window, they could see Alan standing on the ice, watching them. Then something dark seemed to pour out of the hole behind him, spreading across the ground like living shadow. Back on the horizon, they locked themselves in the command center. "We need to understand what we're dealing with," Jack said as Sam treated his wound. "Ellie, what did you learn down there?" Ellie connected her scanner to the ship's computer, displaying the translations of the symbols she had recorded. Sorithol is the last of its kind. They were ancient beings that evolved beyond physical form. According to these texts, they fed on consciousness itself, the thoughts and minds of intelligent species. "It can control minds," Sam added, thinking of Alan. "It got into his head." "Not just his," Ellie said quietly. "Our dreams, the signals affecting Earth. Sorithol has been reaching out psychically for a long time." A transmission from Earth interrupted them. Dr. Carter's face appeared on screen, the image distorted and breaking up. "Jack, can you hear me? Something's happening on Earth. People are experiencing mass hallucinations. Some are acting violently. It started right after you landed on Triton." "It's Sorithol," Jack told her. "We accidentally released something. An entity imprisoned there billions of years ago." "My God," Olivia whispered. "The influence is spreading. We're seeing unusual brain activity in millions of people." The transmission cut out suddenly. When they restored it, they could see chaos in the NASA control room. People argued violently, and some appeared to be in trances. "Sorithol is extending its reach," Ellie said. "It's trying to influence Earth from here." Sam had been analyzing the energy patterns emitted by the entity. "Look at this," he said, pointing to his screen. "Its power signature fluctuates when it tries to control minds. Like it's feeding." "That's it," Ellie realized. "It doesn't just control consciousness, it consumes it. Every mind it touches becomes food and a tool at the same time." A heavy banging sound came from the ship's outer airlock. Through the security camera, they saw Alan standing outside in his spacesuit. "Let me in." His voice came through the comm system, sounding almost normal. "Something happened to me down there, but I'm better now." "Don't open it," Sam warned. "That's not him talking." Jack opened a channel. "Alan, if you're still in there, fight it. We want to help you." Alan's face twisted into an unnatural smile. "Your friend is merely a vessel now. I have waited billions of years for this moment. Your species has finally evolved enough technology to free me and carry me to your fertile world. It's been influencing human development," Ellie realized, "guiding us subtly toward space travel." For how long? Sam wondered. The texts mentioned Sorithol could project its consciousness across great distances. What if it's been reaching Earth for centuries? Strange dreams, unexplained phenomena, pushing us to develop technology that would eventually bring us here. Jack looked at the security feed where Alan continued to try breaking into the airlock. "We can't let it reach Earth." "We might be too late," Sam said, pointing to another screen showing Triton's surface. The darkness had spread across a huge area, and energy readings suggested it was building toward something. Ellie's face paled. "It's gathering strength. I think it's preparing to leave Triton." Sam worked frantically at his station, analyzing data from the entity now spreading across Triton's surface. His eyes widened as he noticed a pattern in the energy readings. "Look at this," he called to Jack and Ellie. "When Sorithol tries to extend its influence, there's a fluctuation in its energy field. It creates a specific frequency that drops for about 3 seconds. Jack leaned over Sam's shoulder. "A weakness. Maybe. If we could generate a counter-frequency during that drop, we might disrupt its ability to maintain cohesion." On the security monitors, they watched Alan finally give up trying to breach the airlock. He walked back toward the dark mass spreading across Triton's surface, his movements puppet-like. "We need a plan," Jack said. "Something that can contain this thing." Ellie had been reviewing more of the translated text from the ancient structure. There might be a way. The beings who imprisoned Xorithal before used something called a quantum containment field. They trapped it in a space between realities. Can we recreate that kind of technology? Jack asked. Sam thought for a moment. Not exactly, but our ship's experimental drive system operates on similar principles. If I could modify it to generate a field around Xorithal instead of the ship, you'd have to get close to it, Jack pointed out. Too dangerous. Their communication system suddenly activated. Dr. Carter appeared on screen, looking exhausted. We've established emergency protocols, she reported. The influence is strongest in major population centers. People are experiencing shared hallucinations, and some are building strange devices we don't understand. Xorithal is trying to create conduits on Earth, Ellie explained. Devices that would strengthen its connection. Olivia nodded. We've gathered the world's leading physicists and neuroscientists. They're working on ways to block the signal. Tell them to focus on this frequency range, Sam said, sending data to Earth. It might help shield people temporarily. After the transmission ended, the three of them gathered to finalize their plan. The Horizon's fusion reactor could be converted into a weapon, Sam explained. If we overload it while generating the counter-frequency, it might create a field strong enough to trap Xorithal again. That would destroy the ship, Jack said quietly. Yes, and someone would need to stay aboard to make sure the sequence completes properly. Ellie had been unusually quiet. There's something else in these texts, she finally said. A reference to defeating Xorithal with a unified consciousness. I think the ancient beings combined their mental energy somehow. Like a collective mind? Jack asked. Exactly. What if we could do something similar? Use our minds as bait while simultaneously attacking the entity. Sam looked skeptical. How would we coordinate that? Dr. Carter could help. If enough people on Earth focused their thoughts in the same way at the same time. They spent hours refining the plan. Sam modified the ship's systems to generate the counter-frequency. Jack prepared the fusion reactor for the desperate gambit. Ellie coordinated with Earth, explaining her theory about a unified mental defense. Xorithal feeds on fear and isolation, she told Dr. Carter. We need people to focus on connection and hope instead. It might weaken its hold. As they worked, the entity grew stronger. The darkness had covered nearly half of Triton's visible surface. Energy readings showed it gathering power for what they feared would be an attempt to leave the moon entirely. It's almost time, Jack said, looking at his team. Sam, you've configured the escape pod. Sam nodded. It's ready. But Jack, you don't have to. We both know someone needs to stay with the ship to make sure this works, Jack interrupted. As captain, that's my responsibility. Ellie reached out and squeezed his hand. There has to be another way. Jack shook his head. Xorithal has waited billions of years. It's not going to give up now. We have one chance to stop it before it reaches Earth. Outside the ship, the darkness began to pulse with eerie light. Xorithal was ready to make its move. The darkness covering Triton's surface began to move toward the horizon. Tendrils of shadow reached upward like grasping fingers, trying to touch the ship. Inside, warning alarms blared as the ship's systems detected the approaching entity. It's coming for us, Sam said, his voice tense as he watched the monitors. Ellie finished her final transmission to Earth. Dr. Carter says they're ready. People around the world will begin the coordinated mental exercise in 30 minutes. Jack took a deep breath and faced his crew. This is it. Sam, Ellie, get to the escape pod. I'll begin the reactor overload sequence once you're away. Jack, Ellie began. That's an order, he said firmly. Humanity needs to know what we found here. Someone has to make it back. Before they could argue further, the ship shuddered violently. The lights flickered and went out, plunging them into darkness before emergency power kicked in. What was that? Sam asked. On the security feed, they saw Major Blackwood floating outside the ship. His face was no longer visible behind his helmet's visor, which was filled with swirling darkness. In his hands, he held some kind of device attached to the ship's hull. He's trying to disable our systems, Sam realized. Another violent shake rocked the ship. Suddenly, the temperature dropped drastically as air began to vent from a breached section. Emergency bulkheads activated, the computer announced. Section 3 compromised. Go, Jack shouted. Get to the pod now. They ran through the corridors as the ship continued to shake. Behind them, metal groaned as something began to tear through the hull. The darkness was finding its way inside. When they reached the escape pod, Sam hesitated. The communication array needs to be modified to broadcast the disruptive frequency. I need to stay and finish it. Both of you go, Jack insisted. There's no time, Sam said. The pod only needs one pilot anyway. Ellie should go. She has all the research data. Before Jack could protest, Sam pushed Ellie toward the pod. Tell them what happened here. Make sure they're ready. Jack nodded, knowing Sam was right. Together, they helped Ellie into the pod. I'll transmit the frequency data once it's ready, Sam promised her. Use it to coordinate Earth's defense. Tears in her eyes, Ellie sealed the pod door. Moments later, it detached from the horizon and accelerated away from Triton. As Jack and Sam hurried back to the command center, they felt a presence invading their minds. Images of their worst fears flashed before their eyes. Jack saw Earth burning, humanity enslaved by darkness. Sam witnessed his family turning against each other, their eyes black and empty. It's attacking our minds, Sam gasped, struggling to focus. The mind shields aren't working anymore. They reached the command center to find it filled with a thin black mist. The main screen showed Major Blackwood standing on the hull, now joined by floating tendrils of darkness that seemed to be merging with his suit. We need to hurry, Jack said, fighting against the mental assault. Begin the reactor modifications. I'll try to deal with Alan. Jack made his way to an airlock and put on a spacesuit. I'm going outside to stop him from damaging the ship further. Be careful, Sam warned. That's not Alan anymore. It's Sorithal using his body. Jack cycled through the airlock and emerged onto the hull. Triton hung below, now almost completely covered in darkness. Above, the stars seemed dimmer, as if the entity was somehow consuming their light. Major Blackwood turned toward Jack, his movements jerky and unnatural. When he spoke through the comm system, his voice was layered with something ancient and cold. Your species is so young, so fragile, the voice said. Yet you believe you can challenge me. I have consumed civilizations far greater than yours. Alan, Jack called. If you're still in there, fight it. Help us stop this thing. For a moment, Alan's body seemed to tremble, his hand reaching up to his helmet. Then he screamed, a sound of pure agony that cut through the comm system before being silenced. Your friend is gone, Sorithal said through Alan's body. As you will be. As your world will be. Alan lunged at Jack, the two of them grappling on the hull as Triton's dark surface loomed below. The battle for humanity had begun. Jack struggled against Alan's unnaturally strong grip as they fought on the hull of the horizon. With each passing second, the darkness below them grew more intense, pulsing with malevolent energy. You cannot win. Sorithal's voice came through Alan's comm. I have existed since before your species crawled from the oceans. Jack managed to break free and push himself away. Sam, how's the reactor? He called through his own comm. Almost ready, Sam's strained voice replied. But something's wrong. The frequency isn't disrupting Sorithal like it should. It's adapting too quickly. As Alan moved toward him again, Jack noticed something. When Sorithal spoke,